A popular coffee shop is back open after it was forced to temporarily close following a failed health inspection. This while another coffee shop brews up a perfect score. Those and more in this week's Food for Thought. KCBD News Channel 11's Christy Harton dishes out the details.
7 Brew at 7403 Milwaukee had 31 violations. They were forced to close for 24 hours and correct their violations before they were allowed to reopen. Here's a look at their priority violations. There was an orange-brown residue inside the ice machine. An employee wiped a table and then returned to food service without washing their hands. A hand sink was blocked by a blender, and the blender's cord was inside the sink basin. Another hand sink was blocked by an ice bin. An employee's long, painted artificial fingernails were touching the nozzle of the whipped cream and other containers. Soapy water from the 3-compartment sink was overflowing onto a prep table and bottles of syrup. The chemical dispenser hose was below the flood level of the sink. The floors of the entire prep area have large puddles of standing water. The restroom floor is covered in water. A sponge was damaged and missing material. The sanitizer solution was not strong enough. A measuring cup used for sugar has a dried spill inside the cup. Gaskets on the reach-in cooler were torn. Only one employee had a food handler certification available. Toxic items were not labeled, and the inspector notes, due to the number and the nature of the violations, the person in charge nor the food service staff demonstrated food safety knowledge. The facility was re-inspected and allowed to reopen. Ohana Japanese Steakhouse at 114 West Loop 289 had 39 violations. Here's a look at their priority violations. Raw beef was stored above ready-to-eat items. Raw chicken was above raw beef and ready-to-eat lemons. Crab mix did not have a date mark. Vegetable peelers were dirty. There was an accumulation of brown residue in the 3-compartment sink and an accumulation of black residue in the prep sink. A service sink was not plumbed correctly. A spatula and plastic containers were damaged. 2 employees did not have a food handler certification. The liner inside of a reach-in cooler was peeling, and the inspector notes, due to the number and the nature of the violations, managerial control was not observed. The report shows most of the violations were corrected at the time of the inspection. Brahms Ice Cream and Dairy at 5002 Milwaukee had 45 violations. Here's a look at their priority violations. There was visible debris on the ice in the ice machine. The deflector plate of the ice machine had black debris and soil residue on it. When scooping ice cream, employees were scraping ice buildup from the reach-in freezer into the ice cream product. The hot fudge and caramel sauce nozzles had an accumulation of dried sauce on them. Sliced ham and diced tomatoes did not have a date mark. 2 knives had a dark residue on them. 2 clean food dicers still had food on them. Employees turned off the faucet at the hand sink with their bare hands. A barrier, like a paper towel, must be used to prevent cross-contamination. Items were inside 2 different hand sinks. Hand sinks are for hand washing only to prevent cross-contamination. A hand sink was blocked. Lids had stickers on them. The sanitizer solution was not strong enough. Toxic items were not properly stored, and the inspector notes, due to the number and the nature of the violations, food safety knowledge was not demonstrated. The report shows most of the violations were corrected at the time of the inspection. Now to the good news. Here's a look at this week's top performers. My Sushi inside the Walmart at 98th and University, and Starbucks inside the United at 114th and Slide. For KCBD News Channel 11's Food for Thought, I'm Christy Harton.